If Joe loses, it's the fault of him and the DNC. I don't get why that's so hard for libs to understand. Well, they rely on not understanding.
Head to Michigan, Caddy K, and then Adrian. What do you?
I think the vote uncommitted thing is such a fucking banger overall. Something that I have regularly advocated for is to demand concessions from your politicians. And here it is, a campaign like this that started off out of nowhere, getting mainstream coverage, saying this is going to hurt Joe Biden's chances, saying that this is actually pushing Joe Biden to turn Michigan into contested territory. That's actually huge. I mean, this is massive. Genuinely different from the way that the media refused to cover the perspective of voters in general. Single issue voters are never shamed except when it's Muslims. Yeah, the irony is single issue voters are technically probably the most motivated voters, I would say, other than like obviously party loyalists, like diehard party loyalists. It's a massive reason for why people vote a certain way. And if you can't arrive at a single issue, what is this? You had a very powerful moment 3 years ago on Dems and voting. This moment of yours is what actually radicalized me. It's about voting.
Why there is no president who is a king.
Here's the lie. And this is a lie that, and this is an overall pretty good speech from Biden, I'll admit. But here's the lie that everyone tells you. Okay? The ballot is sacred. Okay, if the ballot is sacred, then why aren't you literally doing like 15th century style tribunals as you fucking dump Republicans in the water to see if they float, or otherwise they are literally witches, and you cast them out to die for everything that they have done to make sure that Americans can't vote? If it's so fucking sacred, then defend it like it is. But no, that's the reality. That's the lie that they tell you, because it's not fucking sacred and they don't give a shit. If it was so goddamn sacred, they would have lined up Supreme Court justices and put them under the same level of scrutiny of a church tribunal, okay? When the Supreme Court of the United States dismantled the Voting Rights Act, allowing states to do whatever the fuck they want to make sure that black people can't vote, they should have been tried. Okay? What's up? What the fuck is up? So maybe it's not fucking sacred, because you can't sit here and lie to me about the sanctity of an individual vote cast while the other side literally straight the fuck up denies that very basic right to American citizens and tries to justify it by saying that the integrity of our elections are under threat. You can't, either you're lying about the sanctity of the ballot, or it's sacred and you're doing nothing. And that's it. You can't say that the vote is a sacred process. These institutions are sacred, and then turn around and jerk each other off when half the fucking people sitting next to you inside of those halls, those sacred halls, are literally directly responsible for these fucking hogs penetrating those walls itself. This is on January 7th, 2021. Capitol storming aftermath. You missed that Trump cutout? I gifted it to Maya. I think it was Maya for Alveus, for the Alveus Sanctuary. Damn, did you actually play Rust that day? I did. You have to keep going. It's amazing. These guys didn't fucking come out of nowhere. Like, this guy lives in Arkansas, okay? Richard Bego Barnett. lives in Arkansas, and he has a glass and glazing company. Okay? That motherfucking small business tyrant flew from Arkansas to Washington, D.C. to storm the halls of Congress. Where did he get that idea? Huh? Where the fuck did he get that idea? Who told him that this is allowed and justifiable? Those very same fuckers who sit next to you that you do business with every day in those very same halls of Congress. Don't tell me about the fucking sanctity of these institutions. Don't tell me about the sacred halls and the long and complicated history behind them, where Americans could always find, they could always get together and recognize that they're Americans so they can unite under one cause, fucking over black people, giving tax cuts to the wealthy, deregulating industries, or expanding our military budgets in an endless sea of conquest overseas as we destroy the rest of the planet so that the military industrial complex can generate a tidy profit while we literally fucking throw young men and women into the fire and grind them just so they can maybe have a shot at upward social mobility. So they can get free college education and health care. Things that are offered to every single fucking citizen unconditionally in the rest of the comparable OECD nations. Don't talk to me about the fucking sanctity of the halls of Congress when the only time that these fucking pieces of shit unite is literally when it comes to benefiting the interests of the corporations of the wealthy with a little bit of fucking breadcrumbs to you. Congress, so important.
No Congress. That's a House of Lords.
Can you be more angry more often? I'm tired, dude. Hire someone to make a searchable database of your old takes so you can just play clips and give your voice a rest, King. I mean, Little Bear does that specifically. This is what happened just now. But, well, Hasan, why are you always consistent? Weird how your haters keep saying you're becoming more alt-left. Yeah. I am already angry. Anyway, we'll do a little bit of hog watch and have fun in a second. Let's hear what Morning Joe has to say
You're
about
looking
the
for and
uncommitted voters.
are some of the concerns we've talked about here, given the war with Israel, a big issue for President Biden.
Yeah, look, I think grief runs in concentric circles, right? And for people who are living in Michigan, who are Arab American, who are Palestinian American, who have actually family members in Gaza, this isn't going to go away very soon. I think there are lots of groups who are disaffected with Joe Biden at the moment who may well come back to vote for Democrats in November. But if you've lost a mother or you've lost a father or if you've lost a grandparent or you've lost a child, it takes a long time. And they're not going to forget what's happening in Gaza very quickly. And I'm hearing it from Arab American friends. I'm hearing it from Palestinian friends. This is deeply personal to them. So you may well see a largest group of uncommitted voters. I don't think those voters are necessarily going to vote for Donald Trump.
Right.
But it could be that they stay home in November. And if, of all of the groups who at the moment are suggesting that they aren't happy with Joe Biden, I think that is the group, and because Michigan is such an important state, that is the group that the White House should be most worried about.
And Adrian, the White House is trying to sort of shift, and but they're dealing with an unwieldy partner. in Israel with Netanyahu.
Yep.
Kind of a difficult challenge for President Biden. How is the administration doing in terms of trying to counter some of these very deep resentments and feelings among American voters, Arab American voters?
Well, I think it's important to know that they are taking a two-track process here. As we noted in the previous hour, you've got Jake Sullivan, Tony Blinken, some real seasoned veteran pros who are traveling to the Middle East constantly, doing, behind-the-scenes diplomacy in a very effective way. At the same time, of course, the administration, the campaign is really trying to reach those Arab American voters and trying to have at least a dialogue going on. So I think when we see what happens in Michigan today, it's going to give, number one, the campaign a roadmap to determine, where are the voters? Are we able to get them in our corner?
Right.
It's also important to know is
I feel like an uncontested primary where there is still some level of contention implies that the current administration is doing a horribly bad job of managing any conflict, really. There's no opposition. That's crazy that they're still they're going to look at what the primary voters are saying and doing. It's that's insane. There's no fucking Bernie Sanders. There is no valid second candidate at play. You're basically losing a race to yourself. It's pretty wild that is what is going on currently. Hasan, what would you say to the people that say Biden's current presidential track record in terms of policy, jobs, and economy, I think in terms of metrics, is doing well? There are definitely areas where Biden is, and I say this in all sincerity, more progressive than every other contemporary Democratic Party president, and of course the Republicans as well. This much is true. There has not been a single president that it was actively a president that walked on a fucking picket line. Okay? Now, obviously, that's a low bar to clear, but that's still important. However, metrics, unfortunately, I guess, for the Democratic Party defenders, do not mean anything for the broader majority of voters. And more importantly, you are ruining your own personal legacy by getting caught up in a genocidal campaign as you demonstrate your inability to read the fucking room, one, and you demonstrate your inability to manage that conflict, showcasing to the voters that they are correct in their assumption of your number one insecurity. Your age. You're asleep on the wheel. This is the major problem that people have. That is why a couple months back when New York Times polled people that the nameless, lifeless, faceless Democrat, whoever that candidate may be, was outperforming Biden by 18 points. That's devastating. That means that people don't necessarily hate the Democratic Party's policies, but they hate the one Democrat that is supposed to be championing those policies. Oftentimes, this distinction is a consistent phenomena. The idea that people don't really like the Democrats that they put into positions of power, but they like the progressive policies that Democrats supposedly champion, right? You see that in ballot initiatives where a ballot initiative that's super progressive will get a lot more of the vote than either of the candidates. In places where Democrats win, ballot initiatives that are progressive will still oftentimes garner more attention and more popularity, not just in Florida, in places I'm saying where Democrats win even, where ballot initiatives will outlap the Democrat itself that is championing it, right? But it's never by 18 fucking points, usually, especially in a blue area. It's not supposed to be by 18 points. So progressive ballot initiatives are more popular than any politician, yes. But the progressive politicians that champion those initiatives are not. But what you have to remember, what you have to understand, what you have to remember is that 18-point differential is massive. So it's obvious to me that people are not looking at the metrics. People are not looking at Biden's performance. People are looking at Biden's age and seeing Biden's performance as a byproduct, I guess, of him having more competent people around him. But in an endless media cycle of Israel bombing Gaza and killing thousands, tens of thousands of Palestinians, you have to recognize that Biden's assessment and the way that he has publicly dealt with and failed to deal with adequately with Israel's genocidal campaign is making people think that he is old, is reminding people, rather, that he is old. Trump leads Biden by 10% on Israel. Think about that. Is that because people think that Donald Trump would be less bloodthirsty, less violent on Israel? No. But at least people think that he would be consistent on it. American voters are dumb. They don't vote on politics. They don't vote on policies. They vote on vibes. They vote along party lines, but they also vote on vibes. That number, to me, shows that the major point of contention that they have with Brandon in this regard on Israel is his inconsistency, what he is saying in public, being like, oh, we gotta stop it, cut it out, Jack, while simultaneously funneling weapons into Israel. This is also frightening, even though it's a solid blue state. Biden beat Trump by 23%. Now he's only leading in the polls by 12. Yeah, Siena Research poll in New York shows Biden beating Trump by 12 points only. By 12 points. Part of the reason why I assume the Democratic Party sees those numbers and they go, oh, it's because of the migrant crisis. What it actually is a crisis of incompetence, a crisis within the lack of adequately countering Republican reactionary propaganda on immigration, and basically Biden being the worst person for the job. And the more New York and New York politicians, specifically the Democrats, normalize the phenomenon of crime being a genuine problem, and it's like actually happening as a consequence of defunding the police, the more you see polls move in the direction, even in a deep blue safe haven like New York, which is not going to be lost to Trump, by the way. Let's be for fucking real. But still, the reasons as to why the Republican Party even catches up in a place like New York, like with the Lee Zeldin situation, is a direct consequence of taking Republican framing on issues and adopting those stances, normalizing said underlying premise, calcifying it, saying that this is real. It actually, crime is a fucking real problem. And I'm the guy who's going to fund the police, not the Republicans. You don't end up actually winning over voters in that situation. It's the exact opposite. You end up normalizing that position so voters go, okay, well, I'm going to go with the guy who's always been anti-crime and loves the police, not you, who now are seemingly recognizing that there's an issue, but you're not even fucking doing anything about it, and you haven't done anything about it. Voters continue to support the U.S. calling for a permanent ceasefire and de-escalation of violence in Gaza. This includes 77% of Democrats, 69% of independents, and 56% of Republicans. Meanwhile, look at this fucking idiotic messaging. Scoop, the Biden administration gave Israel until mid-March to sign a letter that provides assurances that it will abide by international law while using U.S. weapons and allow humanitarian aid to Gaza. Until mid-March to abide by international law is a little odd, no? That's the most you're going to get out of someone like Chris Hayes, by the way. Who I do like. Biden goes off on a GOP Congress at fundraiser tonight. I've been a senator since 72. I've served with real racists. I've served with Strom Thurmond. This is an older take from February 21st. I've served with all these guys that have set terrible records on race, but guess what? These guys are worse. These guys do not believe in basic democratic principles. This is not a good way to talk about this issue. 3 big details here. Biden's camp is freaking out about the uncommitted vote. This is Branko Marcetic, who writes for the Jacobin. It is what motivated his ceasefire announcement yesterday. 3, Biden aides are keeping him in a bubble, which is why he didn't engage with Muslim and Arab leaders there for a while. Biden is outwardly playing it cool. He hasn't been to Michigan since February 1st, but his allies in the state say that behind the scenes there's panic at the White House and inside the Biden re-election campaign. They are freaking out about the uncommitted vote, said a Democrat close to Biden. I know that they're freaking out about the uncommitted vote because they literally even had an anti-Dean Phillips arrangement in the first primary that took place. That was of note. I think wasn't it New Hampshire where they had like a super PAC basically try to push for as many Biden votes as possible, which was ridiculous to begin with because he wasn't really fucking, he wasn't really up against anybody at all. Biden quietly recorded a couple of radio interviews that aired yesterday to boost Democratic turnout, and he used his trip to 30 Rock to assure the public that a ceasefire, at least a temporary one, is right around the corner. After wrapping the interview with Myers, the two hit a nearby ice cream parlor, and Biden said he hoped for calm by Monday. Nothing in politics is a coincidence. Representative Ro Khanna told us that the election eve timing of Biden's statements. This is happening because the president is hearing that a large part of his coalition wants this war to end. Almost every single committed Democratic Party voter basically wants there to still be a ceasefire. It's crazy. It is being propped up by Brandon's own fucking narcissistic desires, it seems. It took Biden a long time to engage in personal outreach to Muslim and Arab leaders in the state, and that occurred only after lobbying by elected officials, one of whom said Biden's aides were keeping him in a bubble. People in Michigan politics have been ringing the alarm bell, and I'm talking Democratic congresspersons, state legislators. They have been fucking freaking out, not just behind the scenes, but very publicly for some time now. The last time this happened was during the UAW strike. If you recall, smart Michigan politicians kept telling Biden that he was oblivious, that he thought that no strike would happen. And he didn't listen until it was far too late. And then he changed he changed his perspective. Big Gretch is still trying to help him, but she's still like, I don't know, dog. Yeah. Ro Khanna, who often serves as a liaison between the White House and progressives, visited Michigan and was struck by the intensity of anti-Biden sentiment. There's a deep sense of hurt and loss, pain and grief among the Muslim and Arab American community and the progressive community, Khanna said. Biden basically looked at Biden's people, not Biden himself, basically looked at the calculation that was in front of him and thought, well, all these moderates are coming for me, which is good. Right? They care about democracy and they think that Trump is going to destroy it because he keeps saying he will. Right? And forgot that, like, there are so many former Biden votes that come from every camp that he has left behind. You know? Just all of the young voters that were already reluctant to want to vote for Biden. Just basically telling them, it's fine. You'll be all right. Thinking that people will just simply forget about Israel's ongoing, continued ethnic cleansing campaign happening with America's go-ahead and American weapons by the time November comes around. It is nutty. The New York Times did a daily piece on it, which was crazy. The uncommitted voters. The war in Gaza turned this longtime Michigan Democrat against Biden. She knows the stakes. She loathes Donald Trump. But Terry Awal says she won't back President Biden in November.